Failure and I are great friends. I don't mean that we're casual acquaintances that like each other's posts on Facebook or send out a Christmas card to each other once a year. I mean, I get regular text messages and voicemails saying things like, "Hey, happy birthday. I hope this is the year that you fall flat on your face and find yourself curled up in a ball on your bathroom floor." We haven't always been this close, however. I first met Failure at a track meet in junior high when I was running the 100-yard hurdles. My mother was up in the stands cheering for me like all good mothers do, and at the sound of her voice, I lost my focus. I knocked over my hurdle, completely disqualifying myself from a win. I never tried out for track again. The next time Failure showed up was at my college senior piano recital. I was last on the stage and was excited to play the Rachmaninoff piece I so diligently had been working on for 9 months. I had memorized the entire piece, but I brought sheet music just in case, and I intended to wow not only the audience with one of the world's greatest pieces, but I intended to also impress my soon-to-retire piano teacher, as it was her favorite masterpiece as well. When I walked on that stage, I felt my heart start to beat rapidly. My palms grew sweaty. My confidence started to fade, and when I took a deep breath and I started to play, I was horrified to hear the cacophony that came out of my fingertips. I was literally playing all the wrong notes, and it sounded horrible. While I managed to get my groundings by the second page of sheet music, the damage had already been done. And as Failure stood over my shoulder, in that moment I looked at him and I vowed I would never play the piano again. In fact, I didn't touch a piano for 3 years after that event. Failure was not finished with me, for I saw him once again in my biochemistry course, the first year of medical school. As my instructor handed back the final grades of our end-term exams, I saw the big, fat, red F on my paper. Now, I had never, in 12 years of high school and 4 years of undergrad, had even seen the likes of an F. So in that moment, I asked myself if now was the time to quit. Would I be like the other 20-plus students who had dropped out of medical school the first year? And as my broken heart and crushed confidence contemplated the possibility of giving up my dream of practicing medicine, I felt a still, small voice say to me, "I planted this dream in your heart. I will help you to achieve it. Trust in me." And so I kept going, and I eventually graduated. And when I failed my board exams, I told Failure he had won. I gave up, and I started working in the corporate world, determined that I was not meant to practice medicine. And as if Failure hadn't enough satisfaction from my efforts with my board exams, he decided to show up in my dating life. I spent 5 years dating online, and 5 men later, every relationship had failed. By the last one, I was so devastated that I spent 3 weeks without sleeping. I was in a massive depressive episode, and getting out of bed to shower was too much of an effort for me. A little bit later, when I'd been working in the corporate world for 10 years, I had had this unsettled feeling, a lack of peace. I knew in my heart that I needed to attempt one last time to pursue my board exams. And so, I made the arrangements to take the clinical exams once again. I'll never forget the more recent time failure visited me. I received the results of my board exams and discovered I had failed again. Not for the first time, but for the 6th time. I was at work when I received a call from my husband that the envelope that I was waiting for had arrived in the mail. I could see it in my mind. It was a gray envelope with the board's purple logo in the corner. I asked him to open it for me over the phone as I was an hour away and couldn't wait to know whether I had passed or not. And so, I listened. I listened as the tearing of the envelope and unfolding of the paper seemed to take hours. Finally, he hesitated and said, "I'm not sure what I'm looking at." I asked him, "Do you see all P's or are there any F's?" A very long pause. "I see 2 F's and the rest are P's." It was then that my heart sank. I had to receive all P's to pass, and on my 6th attempt, I had once again stared failure in his eyes. I choked up the words that I was trying to say, and I said, "I'm coming home. I can't stay here." And so I drove home, and I'm not sure exactly how I got home safely because tears prevented me from clearly seeing the lines on the highway. I yelled at the top of my lungs as I was driving, "Why, God? Why would you put hope in my heart to watch me fail yet again? Why would you put me through this?" Now, I have never been angry with God, but in this moment, my rage was more than I could handle. So much so, the only reasonable method of coping was to cry and heave heavy gasps of air as I tried to breathe and cry at the same time. I spent some time mourning my results and contemplating my next steps, if any, and all I wanted to do was run, drive, fly, anything but remain still. I couldn't handle being in my own flesh in that moment because it was too painful, too humiliating, too devastating, too overwhelming. It was about 2 weeks later, and I was slowly working through stages of grief. Now, I had already experienced shock and denial. I was still experiencing extreme pain, anger, and bargaining. And depression was definitely passing through me. But now I could sense a stirring in my spirit. I could feel my soul under construction. It was if God, with a chisel like Michelangelo, was chipping away the resentment. And a statue of hope was embedded in this old stone, just waiting to emerge. I began to pray and ask God for peace, for direction. And I heard in my heart once again, "I planted this dream in your heart. I will help you to achieve it. You still have a dream because I plan to complete it. Put your trust in me." And with that, I resigned from my corporate job, and stepping out in faith, I knew that I would need a full year to study and take my board exams, both the basic sciences and my clinical exams, once again. But this time, it felt different. This time, I could feel hope and determination. I began to study 4 hours a day and spend time each day visualizing the process of taking the exams, where I would sit, feeling confident, and finally opening my test results and seeing all P's. And after 12 months, I completed both the sciences and my clinical exams. In fact, I had forgotten about receiving the results when I was sitting down for dinner and my husband walked up to me with a gray envelope. My heart immediately sank, and a lump was in my throat bigger than it had ever been. He asked if I wanted him to open up the envelope, but I knew it had to be me. I tore it open like a child on Christmas morning, and I stared at this piece of paper. It took a full minute to interpret the results. By first glance, I was completely unsure how I did. But when I read the words, "Congratulations, you have passed your clinical exams," I screamed, "Yes!" I jumped up and down, my husband jumping with me. Tears of gratitude filled my eyes. I had waited so long for this. And as I sat back down, I looked up and I saw a failure. He was smiling. He handed me this brown paper box wrapped in white ribbon, and I slowly removed the ribbon and glanced inside. And I could see the most beautiful crown covered in diamonds that I had never seen. And engraved in the center were the words, "Only those who persevere are worthy to wear this crown." And as I looked up at failure, in complete disbelief and humility, he placed the crown on my head and said, "I have never left your side, and through the pain, you are finding your potential." I'll never forget that moment. I finally understood that even when it seems like your dream is done, when it seems like you can't find the energy to try one more time, remember this: the Lord puts desires in your heart that He plans to fulfill. He never gives you a roadmap. He never promises that it will be easy. But if you will follow that piece, and if you know that you must persevere, there is a crown waiting for you too. And if you're blessed enough to meet Him, failure will introduce himself to you. But don't be afraid of him. He's not there to chastise you or diabolically ruin your life. His purpose is to guide you towards your God-given potential. And if you let Him, He can help you find the inexplicable feeling of finding another friend called success. So I hand this crown over to you. Cherish it, for it is more valuable than anything you can imagine. You know, friends and family have told me not to tell this story. They worried that my credibility would be destroyed, that my patients would not trust me, that my friends here on YouTube would no longer be interested in what I have to share. However, if there is one thing that I have learned through all of this, it is that perseverance is one of the most valuable characteristics. Not everyone is willing to engage in a relationship with failure. Not everyone is willing to keep trying when things look impossible. But if there is one true thing, it is that if you know that God's work is not complete in you, He will give you what you need to keep going, so that you too, like me, will be able to tell others that they can achieve what is in their hearts. And there is no greater earthly reward than that. And you might be asking yourself, why is a physician telling me this story? What does this have to do with my health? And I'm here to tell you, it has everything to do with your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual health. Until you are able to fully embrace your failure, until you are able to share that failure truthfully with others, you will always feel disconnected from who you truly are. You'll never have that benefit of walking in God's plan for you. Because it takes admitting that you need His strength to make it through. And it takes truly humbling yourself to Him, to others, to say, I did not do this myself. Yes, I put in the work. Yes, I had to learn to trust. But there were so many times I wanted to give up. There were so many times I felt weak. There were so many times where I did not have the strength. Knowing that, being honest about that, and still going, is where success really lies. And I know you see people on social media who seem to have it all together, who seem to live these perfect lives, who seem to be so rich and so popular and so pretty and dress so well and have the most attractive husband or boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. And here you are just struggling. And I'm here to tell you that none of that's real. None of it is. No one truly achieves their potential without going through something. If I have one gift to give you, it's this. Persevere, so that you can wear your crown proudly. I love you guys.